Welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host, Scotty McCoy, and boy, do I have a surprise for all of you. I have on Zoom with me right now Peter Bracke, and he is the author of this amazing book, Crystal Lake Memories. And it's a great book. It was turned into a documentary, and I cannot wait to have him on the show. And here he is. So hey, how you doing tonight, Peter?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to
Absolutely.
virtually
Absolutely.
meet you.
I'm so glad to meet you as well. I know Greg Gilbert put me in touch with you, and I added you on Facebook and reached out to you, and you agreed to do the interview. And I'm so glad we got to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. The last few months have been a little crazy with
Not
COVID
a
and
problem.
everything else, as you know. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's exciting.
absolutely. So the first question I got for you is like, how
Mhm.
did you come up with the idea or the concept on making Crystal Lake Memories?
Oh man, so it's so weird. It's so funny. I was thinking about it in preparation for this. So it was actually 20 years ago. I fucking can't believe it. It was August. What that would be? That would be 2002, and they had a 20th anniversary screening of Part Three in 3D over here in Los Angeles. And I went with some friends, and it was a surprise. They had Paul Kreka, um, uh, 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 um, Larry Zellner, and Richard Brooker were all there. And they came into the panel. I remember just sitting in the audience going, this was like, right at the time when like DVD was huge, remember? And so it was like, it was like, God, why hasn't someone done like, I don't know, it just hit me like, why hasn't someone done something on Friday the 13th? Like Halloween had like a laser disc, and Nightmare on Elm
Right.
Street had that cool box set. It just kind of churned in my mind for a few weeks. And back then, I mean, I have no skill in video or anything like that. So I'm like, well, a documentary would make sense. And it was just like a crazy thing. I'm like, oh, well, someone should like do a book. And at the time I was a movie reviewer. I ran a couple websites and DVD stuff. So I had written one book, which wasn't very good. So I was looking for doing something else to do. And it was just sort of one of those things where like, yeah,
Mhm.
I'll try it. I'll kind of do some interviews, see how it goes. And it just sort of picked up steam and built up from there. So no, Larry Zerner was actually my first ever interview. So
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like Greg originally got me into wanting to interview people, and it started with interviewing all the Friday the 13th people, as many as I can get. And I was surprised how easy it was. And the first interview I've ever had was Victor Miller, and then
Oh,
the second one I had was Stu Charno, and then Debbie Sue Voorhees. They were like my first
great.
three, and it was amazing how like it was so easy to connect with these people and to get them on board to do an interview. And at the time, I was a nobody. This wasn't even a podcast. It was initially for an encyclopedia I was working on for slasher movies.
Oh,
That's what it was
yeah.
originally was, and then I eventually turned it into an overall into a podcast. And
Mhm.
it's just amazing how easy it is to do interviews, and the fact that you got a lot of the cast and crew, people like I'm pretty sure, don't you have, I think her name is Barbara Howard, Sarah from Part
Mhm.
Four. I think
Yeah,
you even got
yeah.
her, and like she doesn't do many interviews on this, so the fact that you got her is amazing.
Yeah, it was hard. Like, it's so different now with social media. I mean, Facebook didn't even exist then. So back then in 2002, like you had to call SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, be like, hey, I'm doing, for this project or that. And they don't usually give you their direct information, but they would like call them for you. Sometimes they give you agent information, and they had this rule where they only give you 3 people at a time. So literally it was like every couple of days calling, getting my next 3 names or whatever. A lot of searches, but even back then, Google wasn't like it is today.
Yeah.
So it was just trying to find people. And
Yeah.
Barbara Howard that was actually a tip. One of the other actors had said she moved back to the Midwest, and I'm from Chicago. And I think her mother was like a doc or something. So I just did like this weird, like people search for like Barbara Howard, daughter of so and so, who's a doctor in Chicago, and like it popped up, and I wrote a letter, a physical letter, and she called me back. So it's hard because like if someone has a normal name like Barbara Howard, there's a million of them. It's like you
Yeah.
can't just prefer. So it does help when you have an unusual person. Like I remember one of the most fun ones was Michael Zager. He did the Disco's theme song for Part Three. And he has such an unusual name. I was able to find him like right away because I found like music producer. I'm like, it has to be him. So yeah, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's really difficult. So
Right. Yeah, and I have to ask this question because I know she turned it down a lot.
Mhm.
Rachel Howard, Chili from Part Three. Um,
Yeah.
I know she's like a doctor or some type of counselor out in California. And I even found her website to reach out for an interview. And I'm thinking, I don't think she's gonna do it. Like, if she didn't do Crystal Lake Memories, there's no way she's doing my podcast. So how many times have you turned her down? Like, why didn't she want to do the interview?
It was really just once. So Larry Zellner actually called her for me. We did an interview with him, and I think she said that website because I knew she's a psychologist, and so he called her and talked to her, said it was a nice talk, but she just does not want to go there. She's just not interested in anything Friday the 13th. She doesn't act anymore. Doctor, she didn't want to be associated with it. So I didn't personally reach out to her at that point. But so did you reach out? Did she respond?
I haven't, and I'm nervous too. I know Greg Gilbert reached out to Barbara Howard, and she kind of sternly turned him down, like very bluntly turned him down. Like he felt like he wasn't being mean, but she was like saying, I don't want to do an interview with it. Like, I don't know. I mean, by the time you interviewed her compared to recently, like anything could have changed,
Yeah, you don't. It really depends on where someone is in their life. Like, it's weird. Like some people, she was super nice, but I know the Crystal Lake Memories documentary reached out to her, and I think there was some issue with a family issue she had, so she didn't do that. You just never know, and sometimes it's a reverse, where like they said no before, and then enough time's gone by where, they're like, sure. Yeah, you never. Yeah, I wish I knew what the magic formula was, and it's frustrating, right? Because you just don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And like even Larry Zellner, he officially turned me down, and then I reached back out to him a couple years later, and he said, "I'm going to be having something to promote with it in 2022. Reach out to me mid 2022, and we'll do something that I can promote that." So it's like it depends where they are in their life. If they have anything to promote, you can bring up the Friday the 13th and then promote their other work as well. It's like it really hits that. Like with Lar Park Lincoln, she didn't want to do it with me. Melanie Kinnaman didn't want to do it with me originally, but then they had something to promote, and they said, well, we could do one segment. We could, like, Lar Park Lincoln gave me 30 minutes because she was promoting Roseblood. So it's like, I'll give you 15 minutes on Roseblood and 15 minutes on Friday the 13th part 7. And that's what we did.
Yeah. It's also hard now too, because it was so different when I started. Like, there was just nothing. Like, there wasn't any documentaries or books. I mean, I guess I imagine I've done, if you start doing 20, 30 interviews, you get they want to do something new. So
yeah, especially now when everybody's doing these type of things with podcasts. Easy it is to do it. Everybody's reaching out, and sometimes it's like, well, I need a break.
Yeah,
I get that.
Well, it's probably a challenge for you, right? Because like, what do you ask, right? At a certain point, you want to ask something new. So
absolutely. And sometimes I ask things that are new, and they say, "Oh, I was never asked that question before," and it's a good feeling. But then other times, it's like, well, they probably got asked this a bunch of times. But it's like, you try and you want your audience to also be, entertained with their answers.
Sure.
Now, when you did like when the documentary came out, like, were you involved with the filming of that documentary in any way, shape, or form?
Not too much. So they reached out to me. I was like flattered because it was the guys who did Never Sleep Again, of course, right? Which was amazing. I'm like, you want to use my book title for your documentary? Of course, So I helped a little bit, like with names and stuff, but honestly, I didn't, because I'd done the book and all the interviews. I was kind of like, oh, great, they'll do all the work, and I don't have to do that much. So I was there like once, and looked over some questions, and I helped with the narration because they wrote it for Corey Feldman, and then I got to be there for the filming. So the opening, around the campfire, I'm one of the counselors. I'm a horrible actor. I have no acting ability, but it was fun, and I got to get a machete in my face, so that was fun. But yeah, it was great because like they did most of the work. So they took some stuff from the book, and then we did a commentary for it. It was me, Dan, director, and Luke, who edited it. So we did like a 7.5 hour commentary, which was fun. Nice. So that was neat. So it was perfect. Like, it's I didn't really want to do it all again because I'd done it before. So it was cool though. But
awesome. So other than Rachel Howard, were there any other cast or crew that weren't able to do an interview for any reason? It doesn't have to be negative.
So it was, it's a mix. Some of it was frustrating. So, like Lori Bartram from the first movie, she didn't do an interview. She passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. She played Lori. I'm sorry, Lori Bart. She played Brenda. Sorry. She's, not, I'll say born again, but she was already deeply religious when she did Friday the 13th, and she left acting, and she stayed on that path until she passed away. So I connected with her father, and he said, she just doesn't talk about her Hollywood days, but he thanked me. And then Well, we finally got him for the new box set, Harry Crosby, but at the time he didn't want to talk about Friday the 13th when I reached out to him. It was the same kind of thing as, you know, like people just change their mind, but he finally
Yeah.
did an interview for the box set. Um, and a couple people I could kick myself because it's really my fault. So I actually got in touch with Jeffrey Rogers, who played Andy in part 3, Walking in Your Hands guy. He was a doctor. We exchanged a couple emails and he was moving. And then I never heard back from him. And I kind of reached out once again because he said yes. And then I couldn't reach him. And I was just, you know, deadline coming up. I had to finish the book. So I wish I would have pushed more and
Yeah.
followed up 2 or 3 more times.
I've been looking for him desperately to have him on my show. I can't find
Yeah,
it.
he was really nice in email. So he's a doctor. Do you see the YouTube video he's in? I could send you that. There's a
No, send
YouTube
me that
video.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a video of him as a doc giving a presentation at like a medical
Okay.
seminar. So he's around, and I'm sure you can find him like what hospital he's at, you know, where he works at it. But so yeah, so if you look up, like, I think he might have changed his actor. Is it Jeffrey Roger now, or like he slightly changed his name? But yeah, if you look like Doctor Video Jeffrey Rogers on YouTube, you should be able to find him.
Okay.
And then the other one was she played Sissy in part 6.
Renee Jones.
Renee Jones, thank you. So Kevin Spiritus was really nice enough. He said, "Oh, let me reach out to her," because they were on Days of Our Lives together. Because she
Yeah.
had said no, because she said honestly, she's like, "I don't like dark things." You know, there's even a storyline on Days of Our Lives, like a possession storyline.
Yeah. I watched Days of Our Lives. I'm a big Days.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She asked not to take part in that. She didn't want to be involved in that like kind of storyline. So, but then Kevin Spiritus kind of reached out, and she was considering it, and that was another case of just at a certain point, I'd worked on the book 3 years. Like I just like, you gotta finish it and just let it go. And so maybe I should have pushed a little more. So she would have been someone great to talk to.
Yeah.
And then a couple of guys, there's some people back then, because again, before social media, I couldn't find them. And then I subsequently interviewed some new people that are now in the ebook version of the book, like Court, Tom Fridley. I added in. We found Alana Wood Sharkey. Alana Wood, she played, she was in part 5, gets the accident chest. So we added her in. And a couple, like I never was able to find Peter Brower from the first movie. So unfortunately, Walt Gorney was unfortunately had Alzheimer's at the time. So it's passed away since. So his family was really nice. But then I was like really lucky, like I was able to get like Steve Susskind from part 3 before he passed away. Unfortunately, he had a car accident. And I found Sherry Moggins from the first. That was exciting finding her. I love that, you know, because I love Steve.
Yeah, I love Edna and Harold, and I've been looking for Sherry as well, and I can't find her either.
Oh, so you know, I had an email and or a phone number for her, but it's like 15, 16 years old, but apparently it doesn't work because some convention people have reached out to me. They want to represent her. And but a little tidbit, she was actually married to David Caruso, the actor. I think they're divorced now, but they were married at that time. So I don't know, might be, I don't know if they keep in touch, but yeah, so she was really fun. So yeah, it's, you know, it's like, you know, it's like a treasure hunt, kind of like you just search and try to find people. Unfortunately at the time, Susan Jennifer Sullivan was ill, so she was unable to do it, but her family was nice. And then yeah, I think, and we had
that was actually my next question about Susan Jennifer Sullivan. Like they incorrectly said that she passed away in the documentary, and it was a different Susan Jennifer Sullivan.
Yeah, I wasn't, you know, a part of that. So I heard the same thing. Oh, she passed away. So that's all I know. But she was married to a director named Andrew Nicole. He directed Gattaca. And she has a daughter, and I do have contact with her, like her aunt, her relative of her. So she's out somewhere. I'm not sure where she lives now, but yeah, I don't think she wants anything to do with Friday the 13th either. So I don't think she wants anything to do with like Hollywood in general. That happens a lot where they, like, you know, Barbara Howard, they just move on and
you
know,
and these movies are from the 80s. I mean, they were teenagers or their early 20s when they were making movies. Like they weren't, you know, I mean, it wasn't like they made it into a career.
Yeah, exactly. And some of them have positive feelings, and sometimes they don't. You know, sometimes it's a negative experience. But then you think, like, now it's been 40 years. You know, maybe, you know, it's been so long that they can just enjoy it and laugh about it. I don't know. So that's why it's good to try and follow up. And sometimes people change their mind.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. So let me see. So what do you believe was the hardest part about getting the book done, and what do you believe was the easiest part of getting it done?
I mean, honestly, yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, I guess it wasn't that hard convincing people to interview. Some people are always never know, but honestly, it's just the amount of time. I mean, so when you think about 200 interviews, usually, you got to find the person. I usually had to write a letter because this is before social media. So it was phone calls or letters, out of faxes. Then you got to prepare your questions. Then you got to do the interview. So right there, that's about a day of work. So you multiply, 200 times one day. It was almost, a year of work just to do all those interviews. Then you have to go through all the transcripts. So I had like 1,000,000 words of transcript just from all the interviews. So some like went on, like in Victor Mill, I think I talked to for over an hour. Sean Cunningham, we did 3 interviews to go over everything.
Yeah.
So that was like 4 or 5 hours of interview So just going over it all, and you're like, so it was just the work of just making a story out of it. I made the decision early on, thanks to Larry Zellner in part, it's called oral history, which was to tell it as quotes, because I felt like no one had talked to these people. There was no information. No one wants to hear me blabbing. So I want to do as much in their words as possible. So that is a kind of, as it's like hard. You have to edit. Like you can't cheat and write in stuff. Like I have to take their words and make it work. So it was a lot of like, moving bits and pieces of text around. Yeah, like a puzzle. It was a lot of fun, but there was sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't get this to work. And it was just like, oh. Yeah. So, and then the photos was fun. That wasn't too hard, actually. Paramount New Line were really great. So like Paramount let me go into their archives and go through boxes and find pictures. We had to pay money for it, but they were great. And so it's just the amount of, it just takes time. Like it was just, there are times, when it's like halfway through, it's like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? Like, what did I get myself into? Because you literally see like, you look and you're like, oh my God, this is gonna take another year. Like this is like, because I didn't know when I started. I thought, I laughed now. I thought I'll do maybe 20 interviews, right? So ended in 200. So it just got bigger and bigger.
An extra zero to that 20.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what happened. Was like at first I was just gonna do like a little black and white, textbook. And then when New Line, they were really great. They're like, well, we have photos if you want. I'm like, and then I thought, well, maybe a coffee table. Like, could we do that? Like, so it just became bigger and bigger. And then you have to lay out the whole thing and sign the pictures. And so it was fun, but then we had to find somebody to cover. And so it took like 3 years.
So you said you have about 200 interviews in the book. So out of the 200 you've done, which was the hardest celebrity, like get cast member to actually locate and get in touch with to do the book?
I mean, probably like Jeffrey, some of the ones that like Jeffrey Rogers took a little work. Took a little while because back then Adrienne King, as we know, had a stalker, so I couldn't find her. So Joe Zito came to the rescue. He had known her. So that was a struggle. Jensen Daggett actually took a little work because she kind of left the business for a while, and she was with her husband. I think they were in like the Bahamas or something. So that was a little harder to find.
I can't find her at all anywhere neither.
Yeah, she seems to gone again. So I mean, Kevin Bacon was difficult. So I had been an entertainment journalist, so I'd done movie reviews. So I had worked with like publicists and stuff for a few years already. So luckily I had a contact because he didn't want to do an interview about Friday the 13th. And so I knew a publicist, and I kind of done her a couple favors. She said, look, I'll help you out. It's like, she's like, if you can cover this movie he's in called Hollow Man. And so I pitched a friend a magazine and said, okay, I'll do a story on Hollow Man. She's like, you can interview him about Hollow Man, and then the end you can ask up to 5 questions. That's why you listen to the book. There's exactly 5 quotes from Kevin Bacon. So I got my 5 questions. So that's how that happened. But he wouldn't have sat down and just did an interview on Friday the 13th. And actually, I'm not even sure if he knew. Like, I think at the end of the interview for Hollow Man, he's like, why is this guy asking me about Friday the 13th? This is weird. But he was really nice. So I got my 5 questions. Same with Crispin Glover. I did a press junket for a movie called Willard, and he agreed, answered a few Friday the 13th questions. So so that was probably honestly, those are probably the only 2 folks that I guess you could consider like major stars at that time.
Yeah.
Right? Because once you start dealing with like agents and publicists, like a working actor now who's like a Kevin Bacon, like it's so there's layers and layers that you can't just email Kevin Bacon, right? You gotta go and then you got to pitch them and explain, and it
Yeah.
was hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, I guess those are probably technically the hardest, just because
Yeah.
lucked out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know, like, I know you got Janine Taylor. I've been trying to get in
Mhm.
touch with her. I
Oh,
can't get
she was
her.
hard to find too. Yeah, she took a long time. Um, and again, I found her through her mother was part of was high up in a thing called Actors Equity at the
Mhm.
time. And I was just certain, I found this story, and it was with her mother talking about her daughter who was an actress in theater and stuff, Janine Taylor. And I'm like, oh, that must be the same person. So I actually wrote her mother and said, hey,
Nice.
would you be willing to forward this letter for me to your daughter? And it's okay. She says no. And so that was nice. So that took a while. Yeah. God, so
Yeah.
you're bringing back memories. I forgot all this stuff.
Right. Did you happen to get Terry Kaiser? I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, no. So, yeah, that was another one. Maybe I should have pushed a bit more, because now he's doing a lot of stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did an interview with me already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, great. Great. Yeah. And then a couple people turned, like some technical crew people, like the director of photography of Part 7 said no,
Wow.
which is fine. So a few, technical people here and there, crew members tried to get, trying if there's any major, uh, yeah, I think a couple producers. And at a certain point, you just can't do everyone, you
Right.
can't interview
Were
everyone.
you able to
So
find like Nick Savage or any of that?
yeah, Nick Savage is in the book. Yeah, I did
Okay, I
find
couldn't
that.
remember because I know he wasn't in the documentary itself.
Yeah, he kind of, another one has disappeared, although they did get Glenn O'Brien.
Yeah. Yep.
And then she passed away, right? She played
Gloria Charles. Yeah.
Roy Charles, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Passed away. Yeah. Fox. She played. Just
so but then I kind of knew that, like, it's just now it's such a big conventions, like fighter
yeah.
meets, like cool, right? Like people are
Right.
glad to be in it now. So it's changed.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And Bruce Mailer, like he was Axel, and
Yeah, I never
uh
found him. Did you
Freeman or
find
sorry,
him?
I can't find them. No. No.
Yeah, so
I have IMDb Pro, and I look on there, and sometimes I get lucky finding a contact for them, or
mhm.
finding a contact to a publicist and an agent. I get lucky, and some of them are on my Facebook, but then others, like, them I can't find. Like there's
Yeah,
no contact information at all listed.
yeah,
Like
I know.
it's
So
frustrating.
yeah, you have to start weighing it, like, okay, how much time can I really spend on one
Right.
person? So you just sort of accept, you
Right.
hope people enjoy who you can find.
Right.
Again, at a certain
Absolutely.
point, like Part 8 was like impossible. Like there's so many people on that boat that get killed.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could do a whole book just on, the number of people
Yeah.
in that movie. So you just try to pick, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. I know that. Okay. So, like, is the would you think of doing a book like Crystal Lake Memories for the Halloween franchise with their cast and crew?
That actually has been floated around. So there's a lot of issues there. I think because of who owns the series and all the different
Yeah.
studios involved. So I mean, it would be cool. The thing with that is, I guess you want to wait until Halloween Ends comes out, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, that was the hard thing with, like, the remake came out. When I did the book, there was no Friday remake, it was a
Yeah.
remake. But I actually have another book that's going to be announced hopefully this summer. It's kind of ties into that. So it's basically Crystal Lake Memories for 90 slashers. So
Nice.
you like Scream and Summer, H2O.
Nice.
So there'll be some Halloween in the new book. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
I'll definitely keep a lookout for that.
yeah. So we'll have more information this summer. So
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that would like to buy a copy of the Crystal Lake Memories, where can they get it?
it's available at Amazon. I mean, honestly, I don't know. Do people still go to bookstores? I guess it's still in
Maybe.
bookstores. It's still in it's still in print. So, like, I guess if you went to Borders, you could order it.
Mhm.
So I guess you can go to a bookstore, but yeah, you can get it on Amazon. So, and there's an ebook version. The ebook version is cool. Well, if you get the iPad version, it
Mhm.
has video and extra photos because you can do cool stuff. It has some extra interviews. So
Nice.
yeah, but you can find it at Amazon. So.
Awesome. And the last question I got for you, do you have any other projects in the works that you would like to promote to the listening and viewing audience, as well as any social media accounts or websites to plug?
Well, hopefully you have me on again some other time in the future. But yeah, when I announce my new books again, 90s, if you like 90s slashers, I thought it'd be fun to I love 70s and 80s, but I kind of feel like I don't know if there's much more to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
pretty much every major franchise has been discussed. So I thought, oh, it's really talked about. There isn't really a spring book or a night with a summer book. So yeah, if you like 90s and early 2000s slashers,
Right.
it'll be another big book, and
Nice.
another 200 interviews. So I've been working on it for about 2.5 years. So yeah.
Nice.
So.
That's awesome. Do you have a planned estimated release date for that?
Well, so the hard thing now is with supply chain issues, as you know, like, so honestly, it takes now, if you make a book, like a coffee table book, they estimate it's about 3 months. So if I finish the book, it takes 3 months literally for that thing to get printed and sent on a ship. So it's like, I'm hoping if I finish it, it'll be by Christmas, but I just don't know, because so that's why we're waiting to the summer to announce it when I know for sure. And we get it because, you know, the world today, unfortunately, with COVID and now the war, it's like,
Yeah, exactly. And I know that I had Daniel Farrens on my show and asked, because he directed Crystal Lake Memories, the documentary itself, and I asked him if there was plans for a Halloween version of that, because we have a Nightmare on Elm Street one, we have Friday. He's like, well, all the interviews are really out there, like, you know, on their separate own things, but I'm like, make it into a big one, like, you know, a big 8-hour documentary again. And the same thing with Scream. Like, Scream is like, there's 5 movies out now. They're making a 6th one. Like, soon you're gonna be able to do a whole box set on that.
I know, and it keeps. And then who knows how long that's gonna go? And then there's all the TV series. That's why this book I just kind of looked at late '90s. So starting with Scream and that kind of whole era. It was hard though, because it's like, well, where do you end it? So it's kind of like the first phase of those movies. Maybe there'll be a part 2. I don't know. But
nice. Have you gotten an interview with Courtney Cox and David Arquette and all that?
Yeah, so interviewed David Arquette, Courtney Cox, I'm not supposed to say what Jamie Lee Curtis is in it, Jennifer Love Hewitt, all the directors. I found a bunch of hours of unpublished stuff with Wes Craven, so he'll be in there, of course. You know, pretty much everyone you can think of. Still working on, still doing some interviews, but trying to get more. But yeah, I think it'd be great. So lots of pictures, you know, same kind of thing.
That's really awesome, and I definitely wish you the best of luck and success. Let me know when that book is out, and I'll pick up a copy. I'll have you back on to promote that as well. I won't lie, I would love to interview Courtney Cox. I'm a big Friends fan, and I'm a big Scream fan.
Well, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Like that. This was so much more difficult because these people have so many layers of people.
I know.
I'll tell you, it took over a year to get interviewed, so it was like hard.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah,
so, but yeah, I'm excited. So cool.
But that would be so cool to just look at that, because, and if you think about it, not a lot of stuff has been done on 90s slashes as well.
Exactly.
Like 80s, everything is pretty much been done. Like how many Friday the 13th ones you get, and how many, like, you know, Halloween ones you get. Like, you have all that out there.
Exactly. Yeah. Even the first Scream, honestly, was a little like going through it. I'm like, oh, some of these stories have been out there, but again, it's like putting it one place at least. But you know, it's really kind of more fun talking about like Scream 2 and Scream 3, because there's, you know, but there's like commentary, like I had to go through all the commentaries. I mean, now with the podcast, there's so many Scream I mean, so it took me like 6 months just for research. Like Crystal Lake Memories was different because there was really aside from Fangoria, no one covered those movies. So I think my research for Crystal Lake Memories was like 3 weeks, because you know, one library trip and that was pretty much done. But I spent a lot of time just reading, like there's so many articles. I mean, because Scream was a big deal, right? So these people were on talk shows and stuff. So
have you happened to get Laurie Metcalf for the 90s book? Scream 2?
She'll be in it. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. A couple people, you know, some people said no, but whatever. It's okay.
Absolutely. That's part of the industry, but I can't wait to see this book, and definitely I mean, check out, do you have any like social media to plug where they could find when this book is ready, when you make it?
Yeah, until we announce it. So it'll be coming. So we want to kind of have a official release date or a general time for sure. And then we're actually working on the cover, because this idea is like you kind of post it on social and announce it, and you kind of have the cover, and then you got to make sure it's kind of on Amazon, because usually nowadays people immediately go and they're like, I want to pre-order it. And if it's not there, they can't pre-order it, they forget about it. So you kind of have to have it all the time together. It's much different than Crystal Lake Memories was different. It was like you just kind of do a press release and send it out. Now it's totally different. I don't even know what I'm doing because I'm old. So I'm not a social media person really. So I don't know what to do. I'm like, what's a twit? What's a tweet? I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you so much, Peter, for joining me tonight.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You too, man. Thanks for having me.
Yep. You have a great rest of your night. Bye.
You too. Bye.